congratulations on Rearview Mirror. It's an absolutely fantastic film. So I was wondering if you could start off by telling us a little bit about how the idea came about for the documentary in the first place.
Yeah, sure. I guess, so first off, I'm a commercial photographer and director, and I work in Sydney. And I guess a lot of my spare time is dedicated to kind of those personal projects that just mean something to me. And one of those is just kind of getting out into old mining towns. And I started the project in Queenstown in Tasmania.
Yep.
So I was down there photographing and meeting the locals and trying to find stories down there, and it all came about by chance if I think about it, because I ended up knocking on some old door. I heard some banging inside in this old hotel, and it was all boarded up. Someone was in there. I knocked on the door and kind of found my way through. It was a bit scary, but I found my way inside. It ended up, as I usually do, just chatting away and then kind of doing some portraits. And then he said, you need to go up to the old hotel up on the hill and meet Joe. So I went up there, and there was like a 100-room old hotel that he'd bought, and he was kind of renovating it. And one of his friends who was helping him was a guy called Ingo Hansen. So I met Ingo there in Queenstown, and they invited me up for dinner. So I went up that night for dinner, and it wasn't until I sat down and started chatting to Ingo that I realised how captivating and kind of raw and authentic he was, and just his ability to kind of recollect on the past and the days that gone by was just so inspiring, and had me hooked, in the stories that he was telling. And I knew right there and then there was a good idea around him. So he started talking about this place called Andamuka, and when he started talking about it, I was just like, wow, it sounds like a foreign country to me, coming from Sydney, and obviously in the wild days gone by in the 60s and the 70s when there was Serbian mafia up there and quite a lawless town, and some of the stories that he told me just sound so foreign to me. So, when he invited me up there, I just instantly knew that I was going to be going, So, that's pretty much how it all started.
Ingo was such a fascinating person, even to study in the documentary. You mentioned that you met him in Tasmania, but in the documentary, he also talks about the fact that he'd lived right around the world. What kind of life has he had? It sounds like he's had an amazing life.
Well, yeah, he's originally from Norway, and I think he came out here as a young kid. And, he's lived lived in Europe, and he's kind of worked odd jobs here and there around the world. He's kind of lived in Europe. He's got a house in Tasmania now, in Burning. He was married, and he lived in Adelaide for quite some time. But he grew up in Andamuka, and Andamuka holds a really special place in his heart. In the documentary, he says, I've travelled all over the world, but Andamuka is the only place that I can walk down the street and everybody knows me. And I guess that is true. When I was up there, I kind of really gravitated towards the locals. I mean, as you know, I'm from Sydney, but as soon as you get out of that's one of the reasons why I like getting into these small towns and the fringes of society, because people are open, people are genuine. When you stop and you talk to someone in the street, they just give you their full attention. They look you in the eyes. You know that they don't have anywhere else rushing off to be. So, you can stop and have a genuine conversation, and I can see why he likes that. I can see why he's drawn back to that. I was only up there for, 2-week stints, and it kind of holds a special place in my heart, even though it's not to the same degree. But, I could see why he's drawn to that place.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask that. What was your first impression when you arrived in Andamuka?
It was like I'd landed on the moon in a way. The landscape is just stunning. There's holes now, from the mining holes everywhere. It's not till you get a drone up in the air that you can kind of really appreciate the place, in my mind. So that's why I was utilising a lot of drone video in the film. But it's like a scene from some sort of movie out of Mad Max in a way. It's off the beaten track. There's, not many locals go there, not many travellers go there, because a lot of people hear about Cooper Pedy, but this is kind of a off the beaten track, and obviously a lot of residents in South Australia know about Andamuka, but a lot of other people don't. And so, yeah, I mean, the landscape's insanely beautiful. It's such a foreign sort of moonscape place. There's rundown shacks everywhere. A lot of as Ingo says, it takes a certain type of person to love a place like this with the isolation and the desolation. But, I'm kind of drawn to those places in a weird way because I lived a fairly sheltered life in Sydney and, but when I'm on the road, I'm drawn to those rundown places in a way, those kind of places that are a little bit forgotten, and I think visually that's the aesthetic that I'm looking for. And quite funnily, Rearview Mirror got into a lot of festivals, but one of those was in the Arctic Circle, and usually I kind of say, yeah, thanks, but no thanks, I can't be there. But I found that when we found out that there's a Russian Arctic mining town that's on the same island that the film festival was on, and I'd actually wanted to visit this place since about 10 years ago, called Pyramiden. We just basically said the stars are aligning, we've got to go. So we ended up watching Rearview Mirror in the Arctic Circle, which was just so surreal.
Wow.
It's got guys who were, I remember we were looking over in the audience and we saw 3 guys sitting there just before it was about to launch, and they're sitting there knitting scarves and beanies for themselves, and then Rearview Mirror, the desert landscape from Australia comes on. So it was quite a surreal experience just to, be 400 kilometres from the North Pole watching a film about the Australian desert on the big screen in the Arctic Circle.
Yeah. Even travelling there in itself, did that give you more ideas for documentaries? Because that sounds like a documentary on its own.
Yeah, it has actually. We're in the process of releasing a short film with a Dutch composer called Joop Beving from the footage that we captured there with my producer and executive producer Liza Boston, who was also with me when we did Rearview Mirror. She came with me to Pyramid, and we kind of worked together as a team on location, which has been amazing. But yeah, it's a short film based on a girl who lost her sister and kind of comes back to Pyramid, and it kind of with the VO it kind of relates to her losing a sister, but also the town kind of disappearing. It's quite an interesting story with that one, Pyramid, and there was a Russian mining town in the Arctic Circle on an island in Norway, and all they lived there. I think 2,000 residents lived there, and then all of a sudden, one night, once the wall collapsed, the orders came down that everyone had to go. So literally, the whole place is just picked up overnight, grabbed their bags, and left. And usually, when places are abandoned, they're all desolate and people graffiti. But I mean, this has been pretty much trapped in ice and preserved. So the rooms are as they were 25, I think it's 30 years ago. So amazing visuals from that place as well. So that'll be launching in a month's time as well, which is cool.
Yeah. And talking of more stories as well, one of the things that really hit me in Rearview Mirror was that line that Ingo says when he's talking about the Serbian mafia, and he says, I'm sure there's a lot of bodies down some of the old mines around here. Did that spark your storytelling interest? Is that something that you wanted to explore more of?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that was definitely a line that we knew straight away that would be included. We kind of kept this really short in a way. It's only 11 minutes, and it's one kind of protagonist kind of telling his story, but we haven't really elaborated too many of the stories, but it's kind of just like an overview of the town and the place that once was. But I've shown some people and they're like, oh my God, that needs to be a feature film. There's so much there. And I mean, Ingo's got so many good stories. There was a lot of stories. It was even hard to just choose the stories, to be honest.
Yeah.
There's stories about some guy not being invited to a birthday party and then turning up with a shotgun and shooting the guy dead.
Whoa, yeah.
So there's stories like that didn't even make the cut, So, I mean, it's sitting on a gold mine there. But we decided to keep it short. 11 minutes in the world that I work in is actually quite long. So for me, it felt a little self-indulgent letting it play out to 11 minutes, just because usual my contacts 60 seconds or 2.5 minutes max. So it was hard to keep. It was hard to let it play out to 11 minutes, but it was also satisfying keeping it to that length too.
Yeah. Visually, the film is spectacular. Like you said before, the landscape around there really lent itself to what you were trying to do with the camera work. Tell us a little bit about how you went about getting some of those shots, because they're absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I guess in a way we wanted to hero the landscapes and Andamuka as a town almost as a protagonist itself, with Ingo as the main guy, but the landscapes are almost as important. So, I mean, it was pretty much myself up there with Liza, and I was kind of shooting everything and directing as well. But, I kind of, in my style, I kind of always, I only ever shoot first light and last light and leave, I'm never doing anything in the middle of the day. And, I mean, it's hard not to take a stunning shot up there, if you know what I mean. Like, it's just stunning and visually so striking that the landscape lends itself to be captured.
Yep. So, Jonathan, where can our listeners now check out Rear View Mirror? Because I understand it's now available for everybody to be able to sit down and watch. So where can they actually go to see it?
Yeah, it'll be premiering tonight at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, and that will be on the wolftidefilms.com homepage. So that's wolftide, TIDE, films.com.
Awesome. And we'll put a link there wherever you found this podcast as well. There'll be a link there so you'll be able to go and check that out. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. It's been an absolute pleasure. And again, congratulations on such a fantastic short documentary.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Not a problem.